Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. It's Funmi, and today's cookie policy audit is going to be on Tiffany and Co. So we're doing a series on the channel. We've done plenty of privacy policy audits. What I really want this channel to be about is I want us to look at all of the public facing documents related to data protection so that organizations can understand what it may be that their company needs, what other companies are doing in 2025 and beyond, and how you can comply with the data protection laws, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so we're on the Tiffany & Co website. And for anybody that's new here, anytime I'm accessing the sites, I'm accessing it from the United States. Now, the reason I've made that distinction in this video today is because obligations for organizations are geography dependent. And what I mean by geography dependent is the obligations you have under the data protection laws will vary based on the country that you are accessing the site and the country you are a resident of. Now, if you've watched any of my privacy policy audits, you've seen my discussion about data subject access requests. We're not going to go into too much detail about that today because we're doing cookies and we're talking about cookie notices and policies. So I just wanted to make a note that if I am talking about a specific obligation that an organization has, I'm looking at it from a perspective of where they offer their goods and services, one, where I access the site, because that also influences what I see. And the reason I spent a minute talking about this is because when we landed on the Tiffany & Co website, this is my first time interacting with the site. I wasn't presented with a cookie banner. Now, a cookie banner is basically where you are presented with a notice up front when you land on a site that says, we use cookies. The reason this is important for organizations to present is because it tells a consumer, such as myself, I'm a consumer of this site, right, because I'm on it. It tells consumers that there's personal data being processed on them. A cookie is personal data. And a cookie identifies an individual. That's why it's personal data. And before you process any personal data as an organization, you need to provide notice to your consumers. Now, I made that distinction because there's no correct way of issuing this banner because it depends on the geographies where your business provides goods and services. Your business has to adhere to the data protection laws where you provide your goods and services, and that will differ. So when we look at these cookie policies and notices, we don't have insight unless an organization explicitly says, we only operate in the United States. I don't have that background information. The only information that I have is what I see on the site, because these are not my clients. These are just our insight into what's happening from a global perspective. So I've spent all that time saying that because we weren't presented with a banner, and my conclusion on why we haven't been presented with the banner may be because I'm accessing the site from the United States. Obligations under US privacy laws related to cookie banners is that individuals should be given the opportunity to opt out of cookies. So companies like Tiffany & Co, they can collect cookies on me as I interact with the site as long as they provide me the opportunity to opt out of those cookies. Now we're going to scroll down. This is very interesting. There's 3 provisions here. So managing your cookie preferences. To manage the third-party cookies served on our site, please visit the relevant websites here. To manage all cookies on our site, including those served by us, you can change your browser settings. Now, I have something to say about this. I think there's an obligation in 2025, particularly for global organizations, to make it easier for consumers to manage their cookies. Changing them on the browser settings without providing additional information but having to go to a different website is burdensome. Now, I talked about this before. I'm pretty sure that Tiffany & Co operates globally. Now, what I'm not sure about is whether the site that I'm accessing is solely for the United States audience or if it's for a global audience. But telling consumers to change it on their browser settings without providing additional insight, to me, for a global organization, is a bit nerve-wracking. And I say that because the responsibility on how a company like Tiffany & Co operates their privacy program is their responsibility because they're processing our personal information. Now, I'm a privacy lawyer, so I know how to change it in my browser settings. But somebody that's looking for jewelry, like a necklace or a pendant, is not going to know how to do this and is most likely not going to click on this link to find out more information on how to manage their cookies. Now, the other thing that I'm very intrigued about is it appears that the only third-party cookies served on the site here are Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, and Sysmeck. Now, from everything I've seen from global companies, there are far more third-party cookies served on a site than these three. I'm going to click here. I've just clicked on the 3 links available from Tiffany & Co. and I don't see a date this was last updated, okay? We also were not presented with a cookie banner or an opportunity to manage our cookie preferences. Now, for an organization as large as Tiffany, I would expect at least a date for when this was last updated, because the type of jewelry that's offered in 2025 has probably changed. And we can't tell if this is in fact truly the only third-party cookie served on the site. If you've watched any of my other cookie policy audits, you've seen the level of sophistication that other organizations the same size as Tiffany and the amount of third-party cookies that they're utilizing. Now, I'm also intrigued about the fact that Tiffany has used the word cookie policy as opposed to cookie notice. Generally, there is a big distinction between notice and policy. We're not going to go into detail here. I've talked about it in other privacy notices and audits. So if you want to know the distinction, check out my other videos. But ultimately, a company is meant to be presenting you with notice on how they use cookies. A policy generally is an internal document on how cookies should be served, and it's not something that's generally shared with the public. The notice is what's shared with the public, because the notice is telling jewelry buyers and fine watch buyers how you use cookies. And generally, I am surprised about these short statements here, because even though we're provided a definition of what cookies are, there's not very much detail on the different types of cookies being used. And that would be information that a jewelry buyer should know, and is something that is required under the data protection laws in terms of notice, okay? What purpose do the cookies serve? Supporting basic website functionality, help improve the quality of the website, that's good. Cookies may share information with our carefully chosen third parties. This is probably the most interesting provision of this cookie notice, because when third parties are involved, the obligations that an organization have will vary based on the geography that they operate. We also don't have insight into geography, which is why a lot of my statements are going to be very broad, because I can't tell. But when you're an organization, the first thing you should do before you draft any cookie notice is look at the geographies where you provide your goods and services. Just because you are headquartered in the United States doesn't mean that your obligations are limited to the privacy laws in the United States. You should talk about this with your privacy counsel, or you can take a look at my description if you're looking for privacy counsel to help you figure out what your organization needs to do from a cookie notice standpoint. And if you do want to use a cookie management platform to help you manage cookies on your site, you can also talk to counsel about which one might be better for your organization, because there's lots of variety out there. So I hope you enjoyed this cookie notice audit. If your organization is looking for privacy counsel to help you with this component, take a look at my description below and I'd love to help your organization. And I'll see you in another cookie notice audit.